So welcome to the epilogue of this event. Now originally what the plan was that after the event ended, the few people that may be lingering, I would present to them the behind the scenes look into what created this symbolism. But then everyone was like chilling and talking, and I was like, you know what, I don't want to interrupt this. So this is the next day, I'm in my room, and I'm going to give this presentation. And I think this presentation is actually one of my best. I put a lot of effort into it, and I think the symbolism and how I give birth to it and fruit it in the dance portion of it is some of my best work. So let me just refresh your memory as to what happened in this event. The first part was the reality. Here you can see a diagram that I've made and how my universe works. It eats reality itself. And within the reality, there were two short presentations on the definition of the subconscious and then the different layers of consciousness through Indian literature. We took those ideas, the definition, the different layers, and we digested them in the next part over here through 4 really beautiful presentations and workshops. And the first of these was done by Kimberly to look at and uncover a tool to uncover the subconscious using tarot cards. And then the other technique to uncover what's in your subconscious was done by Tina, using shadow work to be able to ask deep questions about who you are and what exactly is it that maybe lurks in your subconscious. And then we had a presentation by Nellie in terms of like looking at surrender as a tool to be able to relieve things in your subconscious that you may not have control over. And then the final part was with Daria, who explored using music and meditation as channels and movement as channels to be able to relieve what may be in your subconscious. Now the final part was then you take all of these elements that we digested about uncovering your subconscious and trying to change it and give birth to it in SOMDEland. And SOMDEland is my mythological universe. It represents my subconscious, and so we use the symbolism and artwork and re-express everything that we learned through this interactive element. And I'm going to describe that. So in the actual event that we had, what we did in the SOMDEland portion was the following. Okay, after these great workshops, we lit a sacred fire. And then we assembled by the bower, which was a structure I made. I'm going to explain you the symbolism of the bower in a second. But it was a structure I made, and we assembled there. And we put on these masks, cat masks, so that we could transform into our subconscious selves. And then we formed a circle around this sacred fire. And we made revolutions. We looped around. This was representing the looping, ruminating thoughts that sometimes after a spiritual wound or after some trauma or after something you're really trying to process and your subconscious doesn't let go and it keeps looping your mind. I experience this a lot. So to represent those looping thoughts, we were looping around this fire. And then we had a goddess of love and randomness come. And by the way, this fire represents self-transformation. And so we had this goddess of love and randomness come, and at random moments, she threw this thing called the rock of vulnerability. I explained the symbolism behind this. And she injected frustration into us, the group, and the group shattered. And they went and they picked twigs that I had arranged and brought it back and made a nest. And the symbolism behind this, and I'll explain deeper, but the idea behind this is that after every ruminating loop, sometimes you can't escape these loops, but after every ruminating loop, you create something, in this case a nest, so that even if the loop really sucks, you still create at the end of the day something of beauty, and you can look back and be like, thanks for that loop, I created something of beauty. That's the idea. So we create this nest. Once the nest is created, I honored poison ivy. You might be like, why poison ivy? Well, stick around. And then finally, we finished by disseminating some milkweed seeds and did some final dancing. Okay, so that dance essentially was part of how I build a bridge between my subconscious and conscious selves. And I'm going to, in this presentation, go through 5 stages that I went through to be able to build this bridge between, again, my subconscious and conscious minds. And the final stage will explain the dance. And what you see here actually is a picture that I took in India and it's a double-rooted bridge. It's a bridge made from the roots of a tree. Okay, so the other thing that's important to note is that this ceremony, the dance, all of these things, this desire within me to understand how to build a bridge between my subconscious and conscious minds, it was all motivated from a breakup. And for those of you that don't know my journey through romance, for 40 years of my life, the first 40, I never did anything romantic. I didn't date, I didn't do anything. And then I decided, okay, time to go on this journey of romance. And I entered into a wonderful, beautiful, 1-year romantic relationship, my first ever. And at the end of that relationship, I was heartbroken. And I was heartbroken in the most artistic, the most beautiful way possible. This breakup was just a masterpiece, just wonderfully executed by Elizabeth. But, no matter how perfect a breakup is, you're going to have some amount of bleeding in it. And so my subconscious was bleeding, and it was bleeding venom right into my conscious mind, bubbling up all of these feelings of sadness and hurt and despair and longing and maybe even a little bit of anger and resentment. My ego, as everyone who's heartbroken, was damaged. My self-confidence, my feeling of self-love were wounded. Couldn't sleep for 4 months. So these were some things I was experiencing. But consciously, what I knew deep down inside my heart was that I didn't want to feel hurt. I wanted to feel deep, deep, deep gratitude. And the reason why was because Elizabeth went above and beyond the call of duty. She did a truly heroic job in the most elegant and beautiful way possible. She took someone who had no understanding of romance. I had never even cuddled anyone before. I didn't know how to cuddle. Even the first few times we cuddled, I didn't feel any warmth just because I was like, oh, whoa, what is going on? And so she had to walk me through all of those stages, and she did it in the most masterful way possible. She had to teach me how to romantically love and love in return. Before all of my firsts, I wanted to do these intricate ceremonies because these are my first experiences of romance. I have to do a ceremony. And so she had to go through all of that and put in a lot of effort. So really did a remarkable job, and what a beautiful gift, and I wanted to feel gratitude for that. And so the question now is how do I console my subconscious? How do I convince, using my conscious mind, to tell my subconscious that don't feel hurt, feel deep gratitude instead? So these are the 5 steps that I did. The first step is not that extraordinary. I think all of us do it. Right after the wound of the breakup, I needed to distract my mind. And so that was doing stuff, through work, family and friends. A lot of travel helped me, exercise. Masturbation is a great tool. Sometimes people talk about self-healing and masturbation is left out of it, but for me it was a wonderful tool. Thank you for that, being able to use that. Stage 2 was journaling. And a lot of people ask me, how do I use journaling to be able to process and build this bridge between my subconscious and conscious minds? And what I do is first I try to uncover what's in my subconscious. And the way that I do it is I write down all my feelings and thoughts. Really more specifically, what I really enjoy doing is characterizing the mental loop. What started this feeling of negativity? And then what are the thoughts that came after it? And then with each of those thoughts, what is the feeling that I'm feeling? So I like to map that out. And then I like to look at each of the mental loops that I go through. Are they similar? It's all about the same thing, or are they different? What are the common patterns? And then I look at what are the triggers? What caused me to remember all of this anyways? That's the first part of what I journal. But the second part maybe is even more important. And that's convincing my subconscious. I write down, because repetition is the way that I communicate with my subconscious. I write down what is my goal. And my goal is to feel gratitude. So I write that down over and over and over again after every loop. And sometimes I write the incremental steps to be able to reach that loop. Now, it turns out that simply writing down feel gratitude is not enough. And what I realized within myself to communicate with my subconscious is it's not only repetition, but I have to pair it with positive emotion. And the question is, well, how do you do that? And for me, again, because Elizabeth created such a masterful breakup, she knew for me what was really important for my healing process was to be able to document some of the things that we did that was really beautiful in our relationship. And this is something that almost no one else would do. This was really her gift to me. And so part of this is that my reward system is woven through my website. If I see my website growing, especially in uncharted territory, it makes me feel good. It makes me feel real good. And so this was really helpful. So this is my website. Within projects, Romance Elizabeth, are all these things that we did. And I documented the beautiful clothing artwork that she gifted me. I documented the new massage technique that I innovated. I documented the 3 different types of ceremonies that we did. Maybe one of the most fascinating was a relationship rebirth ceremony. After the breakup happened, we really tried to think about, well, how do we turn this into a lifelong and beautiful friendship? Because that's really, really important. And so we talked about that. We did a whole ceremony on that. I think it's really cool. I think it's a cool idea. So after every mental loop I would have, I would look at this website and I would feel deep gratitude. I would be like, you know what? No matter what, that year was valuable and beautiful, and we created some things of deep beauty. And then I would journal that. I would be like, I went through this loop, and then at the end I looked at my website and I felt a bit of gratitude. Interestingly, looking at my website reduced the feelings of anger and resentment, but did not help reduce feelings of sadness and hurt. Because I'd look at that and then I'd be like, oh, you know, now we're not going to do this anymore. So to address this feeling of sadness, the next stage of building this bridge, convincing my subconscious to feel gratitude, was creation. I needed to have the breakup help birth something new. And the process of creation, what I decided to do is put a lot of my effort into the Grandmother series. If you're interested in this, it's under SOMDEland Ceremony Grandmother. And this was a ceremony where my mother and I went to India while my grandmother was on her deathbed, and we did an event. And I documented that, and I think this is one of my masterpieces. It was a 30-part series I put on social media on my website. I'm so proud of it. And I was like, wow, you know, thanks to the breakup, I had time to document this. And so that was a positive. And then the other thing that was really fascinating was that a month after the breakup happened, I was doing a hair merging ceremony. If you're interested in that, it's under SOMDEland Ceremony and Hair Merging. And in this ceremony, I wanted to make a creative short film. And so Elizabeth was nice enough, she came back to help in this video making process. And while we were designing the video, we got to talking about, well, what could have been the cause of the breakup? And, you know, you can watch the video. I think it'll be pretty cool. But some things that came up was this idea of randomness and this rock of vulnerability, which I was gifted, this rock right over here. So these make an appearance in the dance. And so it's referencing this. Okay, so I did these things and I was feeling more gratitude, but I still felt like my emotions were like a pendulum. I would go into gratitude, but then I would linger and still stay within hurt. And I began to realize that in order to prevent my mind from lingering in hurt, what I needed was to give birth to something so epic that would lead to a complete metamorphosis in who I am as a person. Because if I could create a metamorphosis of that epic magnitude, and that metamorphosis was caused singularly because of this breakup, then I would feel gratitude, because I'd be like, oh, the breakup happened, but it had purpose because it allowed me to transform, and nothing else would have allowed me to transform in that way. Then I'd be like, thanks, breakup, I needed you. But then what can I do? What dream can I realize that otherwise I could never realize? And that dream was a dream that I had tried to implement in the rebirth ceremony of 2020. So in the rebirth ceremony of 2020, what I was really exploring was self-transformation, and I wanted to get into an altered state of mind without drugs or alcohol, perhaps through dance. But the problem was that as I was exploring dance, I'd be in the basement, I would try to dance, I just couldn't get into it. I couldn't get into an altered state of mind for more than like a second. I was too self-conscious of my body, of my movements. I thought they were repetitive. I thought the movements were novel. So I just couldn't do it. And if you're interested in the rebirth ceremony of 2020, SOMDEland Rebirth 2020. And the structure of this ceremony was very similar. Reality, I had lectures on mask making and on identity and music and dance. And then in the digestion portion, we made masks. And in the SOMDEland portion of it, we did a dance. Okay, so I had this desire, this dream to get into an altered state of mind, and I wanted to use the breakup to finally realize this dream, which I could never realize how to do it. And so I went to ecstatic dance after the breakup. And again, if I had gone to the ecstatic dance while I was in a relationship or happy, I would have just tried to move around. And again, I would have just been self-conscious and not been able to get into this state of mind. But the breakup created so much maddening frustration. I was like a salivating animal. And the frustration, it was like pure cocaine. I've never taken cocaine, but you know what I'm willing to bet? I bet that frustration, the hurt I felt was way better than anything cocaine could ever provide, because it singularly focused my mind. I had so much emotion that I needed to digest. And so when I went to ecstatic dance, I just wanted to rip through space and time. I didn't care if my movements were repetitive. I didn't care if my movements didn't have anything novel to them. I didn't care if I looked bad. I just didn't care. All I wanted to do was rip, and let it all out. And it was amazing. And I got into an altered state of mind for like 2 hours for several months. And it was so good. It was so good. It was better than drugs. It was better than anything else. It was so good. And now I'm not frustrated anymore, so I can't get into that same state. Although I do get into a mid state. I can get into a mid state. That's my new superpower, is that now I can get into this mid state, which is good enough for me, which is good. But man, those first few months, it was like, I was still in pain and I was hurting, but wow. Okay, so thanks to the breakup, and only the breakup, I was finally able to realize this dream. And it was only because of the breakup, because that's what gave me that emotional energy to be able to get into the state of mind. So I was like, okay, great, I got this. Now I actually feel gratitude, really deep gratitude, and I was sustained gratitude. And then I was like, all right, well, I'm still frustrated, and so why not realize one more dream? And I wanted to use this unbridled and nearly infinite source of frustration. And the idea was, I wanted to create something that would rival whatever I thought I was missing. Whatever I thought was at the height of the romantic experience I was missing, I needed to create something of that level. I needed to create something so vastly beautiful that it would rival that. And the question is, well, what could that be? And the answer is the event. The event is what would rival romance itself. And so now the question was, well, how do I design this event? What do I want it to be about? Well, the subconscious, because that's what I've been digesting this whole time. Building bridges, because that's what I've been doing this whole time. But I needed something that was ridiculous. I needed something that was an unrealized dream, but ridiculous at the same time, because I get off on doing ridiculous things during an event. And so, one unrealized dream that I've always had was years ago, before I even entered into the world of romance. I watched this documentary. This documentary was on bowerbirds, and these are birds from Australia. You can see a male bird here, it's like the blue blackbird, and then you can see this the female bird. These are both bowerbirds. And what the bowerbird does is, to attract the female, he makes a bower. He takes sticks and makes a structure, which you can see the female here is inspecting. Really quite remarkable. You can also see he's decorated this bower with all sorts of stuff. Here he's decorated it with, little blue things. Here's another example of a bower, and this bowerbird has decorated the bower with a bunch of rocks and a few red items. Here's a bower that someone who I know took this picture. This person here, Tony. I was in New Orleans telling him about my dreams of creating a bower, and then he was like, you know what? In my backyard in Australia, I took pictures, and then he sent it to me, and this is a picture. So what my dream was like the bowerbird. I wanted to create a bower. I wanted to collaboratively create a mating dance, and then I wanted to collaboratively mate with a human female. Surprisingly, as I went on online dating, this may surprise some of you, no one was interested in doing this. No one wanted to go through this journey of making a bower and doing a mating dance and then mating right after it. So how do I do it? Well, one thing I realized about my subconscious is that I can't let my subconscious down. If my subconscious comes up with a dream, I have to realize it, otherwise that bridge will break. So now the question was, how do I realize this dream? And years ago when I was an undergrad, I created this mythological universe called SOMDEland. And I created it because I was in a state of depression because I couldn't control anything in my life. And so the idea was to take unrealizable dreams, digest them in this mythological universe, and be able to realize that which could not be realized. And now the question is, well, how do you do that? What's an example? So let me give you this example, all right? And this is the jam. This is what I'm proud of right here. I think this is really cool, actually. So under this heading of reality, your set of unrealizable dreams, make the bower, do the mating dance, do the mating, stuff like that. So then I use the art and symbolism of SOMDEland. I digest that using the art and symbolism of SOMDEland, those unrealizable dreams, and then I give birth and disseminate into reality things that are now realizable. Okay, let me explain that. First unrealizable dream. I want to make a mating costume. So how do I realize that? Well, I look at SOMDEland, things that I've done, things that are on my website, and the rebirth ceremony of 2020. What did I do? Well, I had people make cat masks. So then I thought, well, okay, this is related to costume. A mask is like a costume. Why not in my current event, I have people make masks that represent their subconscious. Now it has nothing to do with mating. It's your subconscious. But I'm still realizing that dream. Next thing, I wanted to create a bower. But why not, instead of having the bower represent something of mating, the bower now represents something symbolic. So I looked into the symbolism of SOMDEland, and I'll show you in a second. A lot of my artwork has these double-layered membranes. And you can see it's in the back, but you may not be able to see. I'll show you close up. And these double-layered membranes represent the threshold between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. So now my bower doesn't represent anything to do with reproduction. It represents the threshold between the conscious and subconscious minds. And here's an example of it. So you can see right here is the double-layered membrane. Everything above it is the conscious world. Here are my eyes. Sensory information is coming in. Some sort of trauma or event is coming in like a virus and being brought into my subconscious, which is below that double-layered membrane. Here's another view of it. I'm not going to go through all the meaning and symbolism of these artwork. You can go to SOMDEland Creatures on my website, and you'll get a lot of that. This is again how an idea is coming into my subconscious and essentially being reborn as an avatar of myself that lives within the subconscious. So the idea was, okay, use those membranes and create this threshold. Now it has new meaning. Then I wanted to do a mating dance. And again, I looked at SOMDEland, things that I've done in the rebirth ceremony of 2020. I did a dance. And I decided, okay, you know what? Now my dance in this event is going to be about looping thoughts, because that's what I've been thinking about. It's not going to be about mating. It's going to be about these looping, ruminating thoughts that we have. And that's why people danced in circles, to represent these looping thoughts that I had to a certain extent when my subconscious was hurting. And I wanted to convince it, don't hurt, feel gratitude. So those looping thoughts. And then a nest. And instead of building a nest related to mating, what I decided to do was have at each loop that a person makes while dancing in my event, now they put twigs there to create an actual nest. And that nest represents the idea that even if you're stuck in a mental loop, if you're creating something after each loop, you'll create something of beauty. So something valuable comes out. It's not just hurt that's useless. You're creating something of depth and beauty. And so that was the idea of the nest. And you know, just again, I'm not going to go through all of this, but after you go down the double-layered membrane into my subconscious, that second layer is a ring of the spiders of destiny that weave together Mayajal, the web of illusions, and new realities woven around this idea that's starting to go down into my subconscious, and you land upon the surface of the subconscious, where, you know, things like depression or other things can really distort space and time, which is what you're seeing here. And then you experience these loops. And again, the idea being with each of these loops, if you can create something positive, it becomes like a spiral and you reach somewhere completely new. And so there can be something really quite beautiful there. And the next idea was I wanted to do mating. But how do I mate? And what do I mate with? And so I looked at my, again, mythological universe. I looked at my website. And an idea that I really liked was this rite of passage. I had written about this years ago. And something I really wanted to do was a rite of passage by rubbing poison ivy on myself. And the idea would be the poison ivy would impregnate my skin with frustration, and then I'd have to get into a meditative state. And this meditative state would be, I want to itch, I want to itch, I want to itch. But what I would do, it would be like, I mindfully accept that I want to itch. And then I'd be like, but I'm not going to, and I'm going to immerse myself in the positive moment. And then I would not itch myself. And I'd be in this state of tortured meditation, but get to a new level of meditation. That was the idea. And so for this event, the idea was I would then put poison ivy. And I did this before the event because I wanted to get into frustration. I put it all over my body, but you can't even see. But I got a little bit, you can't even see it. I got a little bit of a reaction, but not really. But I made it essentially with poison ivy to get into a meditative state. So instead of mating, it now represents meditation. And here's on my website, SOMDEland, rite of passage, and you can see some of my writing on that. And then for the mating ceremony with poison ivy, my mom here is applying turmeric, haldi. And this is when Indians are getting married, you'll put turmeric on there, so this sort of represents mating. Here she is. I also did a beard ceremony, so right after this I'm going to shave my beard. But she poured the water, I'm in my nasty pose here, and cut some beard, and then I played this conch, just to set the romance for the mating. And then here I am with the poison ivy, and this poison ivy I pulled out from my mom's flower garden so she wouldn't have to interact with it. But then we're not just killing the poison ivy, we're going to honor this poison ivy because it's now a ceremonial sacred plant in my universe. And then here we are, my mom's doing an arti, fire worship, to honor the poison ivy before I mate with it. And here I am mating with the poison ivy, just rubbing it all over my body. And I did it all over my arms and my chest and my stomach. And again, I didn't get that much of a reaction for some reason. Maybe because these leaves were baby poison ivy leaves. I don't even know. So okay, then I did the mating. And then the final thing is, after you mate, make your nest, you have a baby. And the baby was this, I recorded the whole dance, this performance art. And it's going to go on my website as a baby, and it's going to lead to more interesting collaborations. And so that is the full view of this event. So thanks for listening. And those of you that participated, thanks for participating. And those of you that ever want to collaborate, let's collaborate.